Good evening, everyone. We're back here again. Hope nobody get lost on the way to my channel rather than Steve's. But we're back here to talk about episode 3 of True Detective season 1. And I don't know. I'll start with you, Steve. You can introduce yourself, but while you're at it, you can give me your brief thoughts on what type of episode it was.
Well, I'm Steve from Steve Talks Books and Steve Talks Movies, and there's a couple of sections in this episode that I have stuck with me for a while. But there's some dialogue from Rust in this one that just like gets me every time. But yeah, we'll get into. But overall, it's one of the. I think all the episodes are good, but this is one of my. These are one of the ones that stand out.
Okay. I think compared to last week, I think there are definite plot movements in this one, especially towards the end of the episode. Very much about there's like an impetus at the end of the episode, I think, that drives it kind of on forward.
Yeah, I think last episode we don't focus a whole lot on the case, and then this episode we have a pretty big emphasis on it, especially at the end, like a break. It feels like we're moving forward, and we talked a little bit a minute ago about feeling like a detective, and I think at the end when they put the light on the dash and
That's right.
they're speeding through traffic, it kind of makes you feel like you're part of the team.
Yeah, definitely. Interestingly, based on we talked a little bit about the title sequence last week, and I'd kind of made this very grandiose statement that I don't really look at the title sequence, except of course now that I said that, I looked at the title sequence, and actually the the plethora of religious imagery just smacked me up the face in the title image and the title sequence, should I say, which kind of led in nicely to the start of this episode, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that about religion and the kind of the case that each character makes for and against religion.
So that bit I thought was fascinating. It'd be one of those things, if I was doing a review of this episode, I think I would talk mostly about the theming and the exploration of religion, as a core piece of life, because obviously there are contrasting views of that, and I think actually the whole episode is somewhat fascinating in how it obviously does this bit at the start, but then it comes back again and again throughout the rest of the episode to kind of what does religion actually mean, and the way people act out their life. So starts off with a great guest performance by Shea Wiggum, who people will recognize, I'm sure, from things like Boardwalk Empire and things like that, as the preacher. And as soon as I see a famous actor in a prominent role, I'm like, oh, right. Start scrolling down everything that they say, start thinking about everything that they do. But while he's speaking and doing his whole performance, Rust goes into very much a diatribe, I think, against organized religion. That I think is much more cutting and pointed, especially in the repartee and the banter between the two of them, into either the pros and cons of organized religion in this way. Like it was shockingly so.
Yeah, one of the pieces of dialogue that really that really made me wonder. I think he said if not for religion, then people would, who knows what they'd be onto, like who knows what they'd be up to. They'd be out, it'd be debauchery and it'd be out of control. Yeah. And the response to that was, well, they just wouldn't do it. They would be doing the same things, just be out in the open.
Yeah, if the only thing saving a person and being decent is the promise of sort of divine reward, then what kind of piece of shit are they? Will we be left with? It was like there was lots of things like, what do you think the average IQ of this congregation is? Like, that's very hard hitting at a point, and they sort of probe with that a little bit. The amount of obesity and the amount of poverty that is within that, and I think a lot of that is true, that people will gravitate towards beliefs and things when they are not in a great place themselves. If there is a lot of poverty and living conditions aren't great, people do want a moral center or something to hold on to, or even a sense of community at the very, very least, which I think is where Marty comes out on this kind of thing, the side of the argument on. But Marty has one of the best lines in the entire episode here, which is where he says, "For a man who sees no value in existence, you sure do fret about it a lot." which I thought was pretty bang on, you know, in what he was saying. But yeah,
And I know they go back and forth, but they both get zingers. That's what I like about it. It's not one sided.
it isn't.
There's
Absolutely.
there's not really a side being taken. It's they both have little moments of, oh yeah, he has a point. You know.
Yeah, well, especially as the audience, and you're reading it, going, "Yeah, you're right there, and you're right," and that's, I think, the ethos of really good writing for a section that probably only lasts about 7 or 8 minutes. It feels so crammed full of good, as you'd say, zingers and things that come of it. But they use it as the impetus to then springboard off for the rest of the episode by examining the crowd of people that are in there. But we get a couple of clues as to, you know, things to look out for in the rest of it, because I'd kind of said at the end of the last episode the investigation was very much leading towards the church at the end of the last episode, and now they're at the church. What do they take away from there? And then it was the idea that they were looking at the individuals, but you get this kind of idea that there's an individual with burned skin around his jaw in some way, and that gives them the impetus to go ahead and explore that while ruling out some of the congregation, you know, that kind of scene with Bert and why he couldn't have done it.
Yeah. And they reference the tall man too.
Yes, the tall man with the this shiny skin around his jaw that's been burned. What was really interesting, I think, about the next section, as they talked about this, was it's the first time we've really seen some interplay between Cole or Marty with the detectives that are interviewing them. So again, Rust goes off on a sort of diatribe about, you know, preachers and their capacity for creating illusion, and then he said this whole thing about I'm so fucking important.
Yeah.
And the detectives get up and leave the room together, which raises the question of, one, are they conferring, or were they just offended by what he was saying, given they're from that area as well? And you don't really know, because they just get up and leave and pack everything up and go.
Yeah, and notice they leave the folder there on the table too in front of him. So they get up and they walk out and they leave it there, almost like a test to see, okay, will he reach for it? Does he want? I mean, what is he going to do when we leave him alone? Kind of, it's almost like they're testing him to see how he'll react if they do that. Yeah. It's almost like this cat and mouse. They're trying to outwit each other, or try to, you know, they're trying to out, you know, they both know all the tricks. So they're trying to kind of this cat and mouse thing, and even takes a shot at them, like, you know, I've never been in a room for more than 10 minutes and not know whether or not they're guilty. Like, what about you? You know, kind of taking shots at them, like, I'm better than you are, so I have the upper hand.
Yeah, but it was after that I thought about that and thought, this is actually Cole being a bit vulnerable and kind of making that jibe at them. He's actually not getting the sense of them. He actually can't read them, if that makes sense. So being on the other side of the questioning, he actually can't get a sense of, and he's not in control of the room. So things where they leave the room and leave him alone, like I say, with the folder and with his own thoughts, bring out a side of him that I've lots of thoughts of before we get to the end. But he starts playing with the knife and the cans quite a bit, and I think there's a lot to be seen of that. But that only really happens after they have this this kind of break, when they push Rust on these bits where he's sort of vulnerable, or he feels very strongly or emotive about, because normally he's a very cool, calm, collected kind of person, but he has triggers just like everybody else.
Yeah, it's the making the people out of the cans was one of the ones that you know, they spends a lot of time with his knife and carving up the cans and creating this little person. But the religious stuff, like you said, it's packed full of getting to know each character and where they stand, and kind of, it gives you a lot of food for thought too. And I especially like you mentioned the, you know, me, I'm so important to me, you know, like it's and he's said something like it's the beginning of time when one monkey told the other monkey, you know, give me your share.
That's right, the monkey parable. Yeah. And you convince somebody else because of nature or whatever reason that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good. There's then the bit of a discussion between Rust and Marty about the differences between the two of them.
You're in denial when they're eating.
Yeah,
the
so Ross
cookie.
just says
Yeah.
just denial. He's just one word to describe it, and then Marty goes off and I think, no, it's the difference between ideas and facts. And I think that they sort of agree to disagree or somewhere along that stage. But I think it does bring down the fact that they actually make quite a good team because they very much are opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of the way they view things.
Mhm.
Whereas they can both take each other's kind of point of view and use their skills, as evidenced by Marty saying and taking the thing of, I think this is a serial killer. I think this is somebody that has done this before. And Marty goes, yeah, I think so. And the police probe him on saying, so that wasn't your idea, that was all Rust. And he went, no, I mean, he had pretty good reasons for doing it.
Yeah. I think even Marty even tries to say something like, trying to get like this idea of maybe it's a crime of passion, and he panicked, and he just says, no, that's but nice, good try, kind of like pat him on the back, like he's like, I did all that without any help, kind of almost like poking fun at him. But they are very much opposites, and they do level each other out. They do kind of keep each other both in line, well, as much as they can.
So we then move to then Rust is speaking to Maggie again.
The lawnmower.
The lawnmower. Well, it becomes the lawnmower incident. That lovely metaphor of the lawn cutting another man's grass. In fact, one of my very best friends, that's his nickname, was the lawnmower. Because it seemed every time anybody fell out with a partner when we were younger, he would always make sure they got home safe.
Oh no. It's against the rules. You can't do that stuff.
It became an open joke, but yeah, it was like he just got called the lawnmower man for years because of it. But yes, it does float this idea out there that Russ is a bit of a fixer. The sequence of events that happens after that, in fact, the whole sequence of events, both by planting that idea, being threatening Marty, and by turning up in his house without him, kind of leads to what happens with Marty in the rest of the episode. And that Russ sort of antagonizes and stirs it enough. He doesn't even rise to him when he goes to challenge him. He just says, "Just cutting your grass.
Yeah.
Your grass need to cut. What am I going to do?" But even when he gets into the car, his cars are much bigger cars than Marty's. There's even the iconography of this kind of a bigger person. He's got a shirt off. He's kind of showing that he looks after himself and all of that kind of stuff, and threatening Marty in some way. And the bit that I took from it was that Rust wanted to fix Marty or challenge him to fix his marriage in some way, and he did it by antagonizing him and in some way a fixer of some sort. That he fixes scenarios based on what he decides that he thinks should happen.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way. But it does get his attention for sure.
Oh, it absolutely does. Which then leads on to, I think, the general idea that when they talk about Rust's assist record and his amazing assist record in terms of solving cases. And I think it's floated the idea that Rust manipulates decisions to get people caught or to put people in frame that he thinks should be punished, whether for that crime by itself or whether other crimes that he suspects that they have done or they should get locked away. So I just float that one out there because they talk about that, and that's when he starts cutting the top of the can. And again, that little pressure point where they poke him and say, "Oh, I think I might have got something there," but anyway. But
interesting. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way, and yeah, that does make sense though. That he's kind of pointing Martin in that direction, and even when his wife calls him and says that, is this true? Did he really get a call? He doesn't come out and say no. He kind of like stays neutral.
Go to bed, Maggie. Marty's going to be home. Yeah. But I think we see that Marty has a very fragile ego at the heart of it all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of the exploration of his excuse? When there is sort of that conversation that Maggie does try to have with him about what is going on, because she's obviously not stupid, and him talking about the fact that he's getting nearly 40.
I don't buy all that. I don't think that's at all. I think he's probably always been this person. And
Hmm.
I wondered during that scene if how different Marty would have been had he not been a cop.
Right.
What if he
Yeah.
was another profession? If a profession that he didn't have the kind of stress, or if that would have changed him in some way, if that would have changed his behavior. But I think that's just who he is now, and that's just another excuse. I think he used it as a way to kind of pull at her heartstrings a little bit and get some sympathy more than it was being confiding in her or to kind
Yeah.
of connect with her in an emotional way. But yeah, I don't buy it. I don't think that's what it is. I think he's just doing what he wants to do. Maybe his age plays into it a little bit, but I think he's probably always been this person. What about you?
Yeah. Well, I've been through 40 on the other side. I can't say it manifested itself in that way for me, but I think interestingly for her, she decides not to push it. She decides to relent and just accept that kind of feeble sort of excuse that he has and sort of try and make a connection because I mean she's probably lonely, etc. All that kind of she's missing the connection of the connection that they once had and struggling with it. Um, it also raises the possibility and probability for me that actually Rust and Marty end up falling out about Maggie rather than anything to do with the case. Um, but the fact that Maggie's again trying to fix Rust by saying, and the two of them basically saying, "Get a dog. Here's a partner. I think you'd be good together. Somebody to stable to ground you." Um,
And
you're
it's
right.
interesting. Now that we talk, Maggie does connect with him in a physical way at the end of that conversation too, because that's
Mm,
almost like what he's asking for. Is a
yeah,
she initially comes to him in an emotional, wants to connect with him
that's right.
emotionally, but he tells her he needs this, kind of he needs some another type of connection, and she relents. And but I think that's just her. It's almost like she's in denial too, and just wanting to ignore it. Hopefully, hoping it'll get better on its own.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Um, then we move on to basically the end part of the episode. And if I was not taking notes all the time and I was looking back at this episode, I think I would only really remember from here on out because this is where the drive of the evidence comes, where they start looking back through cases of old cases and trying to find some sort of similarities and find this girl Rianne Olivier, um,
Olivia, yeah.
who was found with LSD, meth on her, this common theme that's through them. I'm found with a motif swirl on her shoulder and her back, who supposedly drowned in the river, but obviously did not. Um, and the fact I think this is the first time Rust has been driving, and Marty, because he's too hungover, is in the car, but Marty still does all the talking.
He does, doesn't he? He still does all the talking.
So,
The and just imagine the amount of time that was spent looking through cases. They do
mm,
they do explore that too at the end,
that's
but
right.
just looking through all those different case files and what that must do to you.
See, I think there's a certain type of person that likes that bit, kind of would like the mindless nature of looking for the needle in the haystack, whereas somebody else might just think that's the worst thing in the world.
Hmm.
I often think of around the time when CSI came out, and everybody wanted to be a forensic scientist, or a pathologist of some sort. And people are like, oh, that job looks so exciting. And I'd be going, that job's almost certainly one of the most boring jobs in the world because you're literally doing the same thing and hoping for a result, but most of the time not getting a result. You know what I mean? You're just kind of probing and doing the same things again. But there was a really interesting conversation in the car then about Marty asks Rust about, do you think it's possible to love two people at the same time? No.
And
What's your reading of that?
I think he's looking for justification on what he's been doing, and it's almost in a way it felt like he was trying to connect with him in some way, or
Hmm.
try to get someone to tell him it's okay to love two women at the same time.
Yeah.
That's normal. But of course, I don't think people can love or something like that. It's like, other humans are capable of loving.
See, I read this slightly differently, and I tied this back to religion again because this is the whole thing about priesthood. Certainly, Catholicism priesthood is the fact that you can only love God, and you have no room in your life for another relationship. So it was like linking back to the clergy again to say,
Hmm.
can you love two people at once? Well, the Catholic Church would say no. when you commit to the priesthood, you are committing yourself to loving God, and therefore can only love one person. And isn't it interesting that actually the argument is flipped and reversed when Marty needs it to suit, and actually Rust is the non-believer, also is the one to conform. I just think that's quite thing. Although he kind of says man cannot love at all, he doesn't believe in the concept of love, which kind of is right on brand, but very much fits into the idea that Rust is actually a sociopath at the end of the day. He very much sees him as himself and what he does. So he doesn't wonder about being a bad man or good or otherwise. He just sees him as himself. I thought that was a really interesting little sequence that goes on. Those car rides always seem to throw something up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's always some kind of conversation that goes on in those car rides. That lots of character exploration in those car rides.
Yeah, indeed. Heather says the world needs bad men. Is it indeed the line that comes out there, or maybe it's just an observation on life?
Yeah. We say that we keep the other bad men at the door, or something like that. Like we're what's between chaos and peace, kind of thing. Like we're in the middle.
Yeah, indeed. I don't know if I agree with that concept. The world needs bad men. I think it does need. It needs grays. I don't know. It needs grays. For two people that read a lot of grimdark and stuff, maybe this sort of is right on brand and saying, the world shouldn't always be sunshine and brightness. Otherwise, it'd be very, very dim and dull.
Yeah.
But then we have the bit where they go to Rian's father, then, and what is quite honestly one of the greatest location shots. That bridge, the wooden bridge that they find in the park on, and then they have this conversation kind of over the bridge, under the bridge.
Yes.
It's like the locations I think for this entire series are like some of the best characters that there are throughout the show. An interesting conversation about a guy who seemed very detached from the death of it. It was the father, wasn't it?
I think it was a grandfather
or grandfather. Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he seems very aloof, but it almost seems like they travel to another planet because these places seem so remote.
That's right.
And so like disconnected from everything else that it's almost like they travel to another planet. That it's just another world that they go into, and they just seem like they're not. They just seem so in their own little. I think the population 300 or something in their little town.
But didn't get much feeling from him, but he did keep the box. And
yeah, why did he keep the box that long?
Why do you keep the box that long? And it does remind me of Rust and his living situation and the things that he has in his house. The piles of books and boxes and things. Kind of a similar kind of idea of what he just keeps around him as a token of his life, of the things that, obviously the things that happened in his past. It seems to be very, very on brand for him.
Like how he asks, I'm not stupid. Why are you asking me these questions? After telling him, but yeah, I didn't think of it that way. But you do wonder why he kept the box, and almost like it was maybe he does care. Maybe he's just trying to not show his vulnerability, and he does care. But you get the impression from him, and just with his dialect, that he's kind of like that was a long time ago.
It could also just be that he kept one box for stuff. As like the last bit of memory of them, rather than kind of, clearing everything else out so they could deal with the loss, and then just keep this one little small box of a diary and stuff, wasn't that? But the kind of
yearbook and was
yearbook,
diary,
that's right, something like that, and they're able to use her. But then it leads us on to the school, which they visit very briefly before they go away, and the fact that the school is linked to the governor now, who's Tuttle. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
And this is the school that they were talking about was shut down in 92 because of the Andrew, which they assume is the hurricane, etc. Again, the House of Worship and Christian Academy. I wonder what that was shortened down to by the kids. But this was Rianne's school, as well as a school for the other girls that went missing, I think, as well. and we only get that kind of information's floated there, and then Marty starts beeping the horn to say, "I've got some information for you." But again, it feels like a very strong piece of evidence that will have to be revisited to later, especially as Tuttle's the one appointing the task force and wants it taken away from them, and all of those things. I mean, it was again quite a prominent actor to be in there for just one short bit in the first episode, etc. But they come back to later, and we get the information about Reggie Ledoux, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah.
Reggie Ledoux.
That he skipped bail. He was busted when he was working in a meth and LSD lab. Shared a cell with Dory's father, and was convicted of rape, I think, or sexual assault, something like that as well.
Yes, assault, but they name off all these things like, okay, he made, he skipped parole, and he LSD and heroin, and kind of like, okay, that's kind of. But then at the end, when he shared a cell with, I forget his name.
Charlie Lang.
Charlie Lang. Then it's like, oh, okay, then we're onto something.
It just felt like a tick, 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 tick box of, things that they were looking for. But also, to my mind, this does not sound like the person who perpetrated this crime is beyond intelligent, in a lot of ways. And again, the guy that they interviewed way earlier on the episode, the guy with the facial scarring, Chris, I think you call him, not intelligent enough to have done this crime. Too many episodes of Criminal Minds have been watched for me to believe that this is the thing. And I also disbelieve the fact that Rust believes that he would be capable of doing it, but like, maybe that's what episode 4, etc. is. He hasn't met him yet, or otherwise. Yeah, they had this conversation, very philosophical conversation. Always comes from Rust, obviously, about looking at the pictures of the dead girls.
Yeah, you wonder how much of that is him trying to make himself, or him trying to cope or to process his feelings about his daughter dying, and how much of it is him personally. But I think he mentions about the look on their faces that they welcomed it.
Yeah,
they were ready to they realized that all of this is futile. It doesn't mean anything, and they're ready for it to end. So it does make you question: does he like seeing that last moment? I mean, is this something that he's obsessed with? Is he the person doing these crimes? Is he just a damaged person?
Well, again, there's a whole lot of things that come about it. I basically have written down my notes. Dark shit about looking at pictures of dead bodies.
And lots of different, there's kids and there's women. I mean, it's a big range of it too.
Yeah. So the relief of death, and in the last second to get rid of that pain, is some sort of release. So again, there's this connection with these dead bodies. Is he perpetrating it? Is he involved in the perpetration? He has been in the past because he's obviously killed people. And the fact that Russ doesn't seem to have any other connection with people in real life. Maybe this is the only connection that he has. When he's been looking through files and files and files of dead bodies, he starts to make a connection with these photos of these people. That this is his way of connecting with people, because he's not doing it with basically anybody other than Maggie. He won't get a dog. He won't do anything. But I did take the bit where he has this conversation about, the dream, the person who had the dream about being a person, and it all dissipates in their death. And it's like, again, here's Rust, who's not religious now. Again, here's the religious metaphor being brought back. Where do people go? The connection with God, etc. At the end, he's not interested in that apparently, but apparently is.
Yeah, you thought you were a person. You thought you were something, and you're really nothing.
Yeah. And he does refer to this a couple of times of having a dream in a locked room, or being in a locked room, as Heather quite rightly says. He kind of puts that out a lot of the time. The person who they were was in this sort of locked room, and their hopes and their dreams, and loving the pain there.
Yeah, I also wondered if he, by referring to the locked room, if that's like you're imagining all this, like none of this is real. You just imagined it on your own, and you've been alone. You'll always be alone, and you were never really a person. This is all a waste, like a waste of time.
And then it goes to say, like a lot of dreams, there's a monster at the end of it, and we see two images then after that. One
Yeah.
is, well, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh,
I was going to
sorry.
say one is the person or the beer can as he goes to cut up another beer can, and then the person who we assume is Reggie Ledoux in the gas mask walking about, who's tall, covered his face because we don't need to see the scar on maybe, and then he's just walking about in this sort of like almost like a video game baddie kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You're gonna get his aggro if you get too close to him.
Mm-hmm.
So what were your thoughts on the conversation right before that section?
Between the detectives and Rust.
Yeah, during the interviews, because they do bring up something. Well, Marty brings up a topic right before that.
I haven't written any notes in it.
He says something to the effect of, "Just ask me about it."
Oh, I missed that.
Have you ever been in a gunfight?
Oh, I missed that completely. Well, there you go. So again, there's another line of inquiry that the police detectives seem to know about and are probing the two of them, asking them individually. I think it's also worth noting. I only noticed this time, and I didn't realize they actually are. I had thought they were getting interviewed in different rooms, but it's the same room, except the perspective of where they let Rust and Marty sit is different. You know, one's against the window and one's against the back of the room.
The and then also the what else was it? Yeah, they talk about that and they reference. Oh, and then I also thought it was interesting that when they introduce Russ to this woman, Maggie's friend, he decides not to take a drink.
Yes. And dances. Oh, I actually have a couple of notes about his dancing as well. You know, when they're in close embrace, it actually is nice to the contrast to him because Marty is obviously distracted by his other girl in the room, so to speak. But he still looks way more comfortable than Cole does.
Yeah,
you know, dancing. He's almost like leaning over his partner and kind of very uncomfortable in his dancing style and pose.
Yeah, very, very stiff, and he's almost like holding her out.
That's right.
He doesn't, bring her in.
Yeah, it's a very pronounced kind of dancing style. He's actually much more comfortable when they kind of do the dancing away from the body. You know, he's kind of a bit more stylish and a bit more flair. But actually, when he's supposed to be that more intimate pose, he's not interested. Like you say, not drinking, and actually, it could be argued whether he even wants to be there. He's kind of doing it for niceties and norms for Maggie rather than for Marty or otherwise.
Yeah, I think even before he comes, I think the friend asks, "Well, is he just going to try and be in my lap in 5 minutes?" And Marty says something like, "That'll be the hard part, is getting him into your lap."
Your lap, yeah. It's not good. It's not going to be like that. Like she does seem to be quite taken with the idea, you know, that he's a functioning member of society. You know, holding down a good job, etc. There was also that conversation with between Marty, Maggie, and the child about the drawings in the book.
Oh yeah,
and I thought I'd completely missed the drawings from the last episode, but then it was revealed then afterwards.
And even when he's home, he's disconnected. He's paying more attention to the game, and he's not really he's not engaged. He's just kind of there. So he's never really, doesn't it seem like he's ever really present?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when he asked the kids to do something. They both looked at the mother Maggie for validation, saying, "Am I leaving? Am I talking about this? Am I doing whatever?" Rather than to him, even though they sort of don't. You know, the dad walks in the room and it's like, "Daddy!" They both get up, etc., which is very, very common, I think, for kids. Dad's been out all day, they come home, etc. But actually, in the inner workings of the house, he's not visible. You know, it's very much about the mum.
It's almost like they're separated, or they're like he's almost like a weekend kind of thing. He's not around enough, so they look to the mom as, like you said, for validation or to give them the final word on things.
Yeah, I like that line from Maggie. Actually, it says, "You know, Marty, you used to be smarter." I thought that was a very. It wasn't an insult, you know. It's sort of comes across as an insult, but it wasn't. I think there actually is a line there about, you know, the intelligence is linked to being present or noticing the world around him and all of that kind of stuff, which he just seems to have dumbed himself down to. You know, he's very much living for, you know, the emotions that go along with life. And he doesn't know about the other woman, but, you know, that would fit in with that as well.
Yeah, almost like he used to have dreams and aspirations, and he's just kind of
Yeah.
he's almost like in a I was like in a funk, but he's almost like he's not the same person. He's almost like given up, and he's just in this rut. And you kind of get the impression that she knows that something's going on. Like she knows that something's not quite right, and I don't know if she's in denial or she just isn't 100% sure. But it's almost like she was trying to get a rise out of him, like try to get an emotional response from him, trying to not insult him, but try to kind of rouse up some kind of feelings to get something back, because
Yeah.
it's he's almost like a wall that she can't get through.
Yeah. And she doesn't push it. She just kind of relents and lets him off the hook, so to speak.
Again.
But
Yeah.
but maybe as a lead on from our conversation with the parents last week, where they were basically, you need to fix this. You know, this is your role in this marriage, is to look after him, make sure he's happy, or whatever it is that you need to do to come and sort that. But you do feel a pity for Maggie, because she can obviously see what's happening and is sort of powerless, but also ignorant to wanting to do anything. But they actually push it that final little bit and say, "Oh no, we need to do something about this."
And you mentioned when they're dancing and how comfortable Marty is. What was your reaction when he ran into his other girlfriend at the at the dance hall place?
Well, it was interesting insofar as you get the impression that she wasn't really bothered by him. She was very much footloose, fancy free, and had moved on. And he just wanted her to be owned by him, if you know what I mean. I think that was pretty much it. And that kind of goes through to when he visits the house later on. It's not really about her, it's about him, you know, and about his ego and the fact that he sort of, this is his empowerment in the world. He doesn't really have power at home. He's not really interested in the power that he would have at home. He's sort of in work, doesn't really have the power in work. He's sort of subservient and following what Cole does at the moment, you know, in some ways. And this was maybe the last bastion that he had, that he did. This young, naive girl who basically said, "No, it's fine. I don't need this or otherwise." And he feels very threatened by that, because he kind of thought, you know, in his head, in his social standing in life, he feels, no, I'm top of the tree above you. You should kind of be under me in some weird, twisted way.
Like he had control of that situation almost. And
Yeah.
he realizes he doesn't, and
He doesn't.
She almost kind of like, we had our fun, but it's over. Kind of like, you know, I'm done with you, almost in a way that. So yeah, that, and when she threatens to call the cops, he's like, "I am the police," or "I am the cops. I'm here." So.
But it was interesting. He wasn't really interested in whether she loved him or whether there was a connection there. It was literally about sexual acts, you know, and that was literally the only thing that he was interested in, as far as that conversation goes. And, you know, as soon as he got the answer, he was like, "Well, okay, now I know," as if he knew where he stood or something. It's like, maybe Meg's onto something. He used to be more intelligent. Dear God.
He's so brazen too, that he, in this room, it's like a big room, the dance hall or whatever, the bar that they're in, he empties his pitcher and then goes up to get another one, and knowing that she's going to come, and they're all 20 feet 30 feet away, but he doesn't. It's almost like he's so confident, he's so wrapped up in what he's doing, that he doesn't, it's almost like he's not afraid of getting caught, or he's not afraid of anyone noticing this conversation that's happening.
I've had friends who did that in bars. I just always blew my mind how they, I don't know. To say that wasn't realistic, I've seen that happen in bars. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? It's a different headspace than I'm at. That kind of ego that goes around there, or the kind of power command you feel like you have in the world. Kind of strange, but you're right. It is something that he feels like it's his town. I think, you know, even the fact that he busts in the door of that house and the neighbors spot him. He's not bothered. And I know he's drunk, but he drives up, pulls up, and he's like, "I'm breaking down the door. I'm going to go in here because this is my town. You know, this is my place where I'm comfortable."
And when he pulls up, there's dialogue about that he's talking about rules.
Mm-hmm.
The rules are important. So I wondered if those rules were referring to her, that she broke the rules, or were rules are referring to him, like he had his own set of rules.
To me, it was aimed at her. From his point of view, anyway, it was very much you were supposed to be waiting on me. You're supposed to be there for whenever I felt like I needed you, and you're not. And you're doing the things for him that I needed you to do, or I expected you to do for me, which sort of says a lot about Marty's headspace or otherwise at this time. But he does deal with a lot of shit at work. A lot of dead bodies he looks at all day.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
It almost seems like he's almost that he doesn't really do the bulk of the work.
Mm-hmm.
He's almost like the go-between. He keeps the peace and he keeps them going. He's kind of like the thing that keeps people from giving up on Rust, and from people thinking he's kind of this outcast. So that's almost like his role, because he's out screwing around and Rust is out looking at dead bodies.
But also when Marty brings a key piece of information, which is basically a bit about Register 2, the sirens go on, action. We're about to head into action now because I've broke the case, and I was wondering whether Russ is like, right, you knock yourself out here. This is how I keep you engaged. Again, this fixer mentality of saying, right, we're gonna get to an end here. We're gonna get a bad guy, and maybe that's enough if we can't convict anybody else because Task Force ain't gonna do shit. Maybe that's what he does. But yeah, the reading of the people in the beer out of the beer cans. Now, just gonna throw this out there. That just made me think that Rust made the devil traps to sit in the house. The devil traps that are out there, because that's kind of his thing. He kind of creates a fiction or creates a narrative where he has this creative streak in him of iconography. I'll just throw that out there. Don't need to comment on it or otherwise, but that's what I took from that as well.
I don't know.
Yeah. And that's pretty much my notes. So the only other thing I said, I think it was Buzz Alliances, is the notebook a stone tablet? Maybe that was referring to Cole's notebook. Almost again that iconography of the stone tablet of religious means.
Yeah. Like he has a final say in things, or he's
the commandments. Yeah, indeed. But that's my lot. You anything else that you'd?
I was trying to think what else. Just the dead bodies and the section where he discusses that they welcomed it. They welcomed the end. They were ready for it. They embraced it. That was all very. I don't know. The dialogue in this shows. I love it.
It's insane. Like, we've talked and went through it in about the same length of time as the episode runs.
Yeah.
It also struck me going through it, like Woody Harrelson as an actor, for a guy that started off in Cheers as a very comic thing, he has had a lot of great roles like this, but I think he really gets to show his chops here in terms of the interplay of the dialogue and the two-handed nature, almost like the buddy cop thing that we talked about before. It's an unconventional buddy cop movie.
There was something with Woody's character during the interview, after he's remembering the interaction with Maggie, and after they have that conversation in the bedroom, they do focus in on his hand. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, well, they used a different camera angle actually for the first time. I noticed that, and in terms of how they looked at Marty and the kind of the way he was lying back in the chair, etc. It was around the time that they were asking about whether this was all Rust's idea. How this investigation was shaping up. That's the only time I really noticed the change in Marty, or how they portrayed or showed Marty.
Because they did focus after he was remembering that after they were coupling in that scene. They do focus on Marty's hands and his left hand in particular.
Oh, right, okay. I shall have to go back and watch.
Yeah. So they do they kind of like focus in on that to show you that there's something with his hands that might be important.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to tell you or not.
No, it's fine. Well, I'll go back because it'll be nice if when it gets revealed further down the line, because I've done an awful lot of postulating already. And if the screenwriters are doing the job, some of it will be some relevant, and a lot of it will be red herring. But that's the whole point of it, you know. In
that's
some
the
way.
fun in it, though.
Yeah,
Too.
indeed. And yeah, like we talked about this before, almost watching these episodes, documenting it like we're the detective is a very different feeling. Because I'm almost sure, like if I had watched this before, I'd have taken away the last 10 minutes of it. That would have been the impetus, you know, the plot, so to speak, would have been, you know, Reggie Ledoux shared a cell with the victim's father, rape, LSD, meth, very common themes that keep coming up again and again and again throughout the whole series.
And the end of each episode, they have something at the end, just enough of a change or just something to keep you going, like to keep you, you know, looking forward to the next episode. They have a hook at the end. It's not a huge hook, but it's something to want to keep you watch. You want to keep watching.
And it's nearly always like a visual peculiarity. Like the last one was the iconography in the painting in the church. This one is the gas mask, and I'm sort of laboring along. Like it's a kind of unusual gait that he has, and the gas mask sort of. It's a weird thing because you can't wonder why the hell he wearing a gas mask, other than to obscure the fact that he might have scarring on his face. That kind of came afterwards, but
maybe when you maybe he was cooking heroin or
meth indeed. Sure enough, never thought about Breaking Bad there. See, I talk a lot about Criminal Minds and what I'm taking from it, but I need to use all of the TV series that I've seen.
Yeah, got to put it all together. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought of the gas mask and meth.
So I need to find the RV. That's what we're looking for next.
That's what it is. So they have an old wooden shed instead of the RV.
It's all good. So fascinating episode. Oh my god, this is it feels so dense.
Yeah,
I don't know how long. I think I clocked myself at about an hour and a half to watch this episode, or an hour and 45 minutes, something like that. By the time I paused it, went back, I nearly always watch it with subtitles on, just in case there's a piece of dialogue that I miss here, or feel like it's important, or miss something up. And I'm always kind of on the lookout for that kind of stuff to see if we can do it. And the funny thing is, I'm not really interested in solving the crime. I just kind of want to make sure that when it comes all out, I can be able to go, oh, the connective tissue goes to there and there and there, the whole way back where it goes through. Like if you manage to solve the crime, which is normally what if I'm watching with my wife and it's the two of us trying to stick our colors to the mast, pretty early doors say, I think it's that person, and then you win that TV series if if you get the right one, and especially for the right reason to the motive. That can be good. And then if you're not right, you just go, would have been far better written if it was what I said.
I think what makes this one is that we don't know all the characters yet. Like we keep learning about new people.
Yeah.
Like Reginald Ledoux. Now, who's this person? So we're continuing to learn about new people all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's what keeps it interesting too. Is we don't know we don't know the whole cast of characters. You don't have a lineup of 6 people and okay, who is the person? We kind of keep learning and there's more reveals as we go.
Yeah. It's that often that idea that when you're reading books or watching TV series or watching movies, the author or the writer has enough up their sleeve that they're not holding back. They're not telling you, at least initially, to even enable you to put it together.
Mm-hmm. Keeps you on your toes.
You keeps you on your toes indeed. So yeah, really enjoying making my way through this. This is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I love it. So good.
Yeah. So that's us for next week. Next week we'll be back on Steve's channel, on Steve's Talks Movies channel. If you haven't subscribed to it, make sure you do. More videos every single day. How many days have we left to go?
Today is day
17, 16,
16,
17, something like that.
I forget.
Around there anyway. Yeah.
I'm good in there. Yeah, I'm trying to try and come up with ideas for for videos. I'm almost there. We'll get there.
You get there. Which movies are coming up to watch out?
The one of the ones that you recommended, or that K2 had recommended, Beyond the Infinite, or what was
Oh
it
yes,
called?
Bond for 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, that one is on the list. I'm trying to save some A24 films so I can do the 24 in 24 days.
What is up with that? With challenges?
And what else? Oh, I'm watching The Prestige tonight.
Oh, very good. Have you seen it before?
Apparently I have, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah.
I have a list of movies. There was one that was recommended to me by Chad called the Everything But the Bones, or let me see.
Oh, right. Okay.
Let me see the title of it. He just sent it to me. Bones and All.
Oh, that's a recent movie. Dear God, it's like last year. I don't usually watch things that are last year. has to be been around for about 30 years for me to eventually get around and watch it. But there's always more movies.
Oh
That's
yeah,
one of the nice things. And like you say, I can watch one in about 2 hours rather than having to do 2 weeks or whatever.
yeah. He says I'll love it. So
No, there you go.
yeah,
This might be the end of a beautiful friendship. There you go.
yeah.
Every time I recommend something, I always feel like, oh, if they don't like this is it. Never come to me for a recommendation ever again.
That's it. And Resurrection is another one on Shudder that I was recommended, so I'll probably watch that.
Very good. Excellent.
With Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth.
Very good. Very good.
So yeah.
Right. So let people know where they can find you, Steve. And
either at Steve Talks Movies or Steve Talks Books, or on Vero at That One MFer.
That One MFer. Nobody else can get that username now. That's gone.
I can't ever like change it. Now I have to.
Definitely not. Yeah.
I can't give it up.
Right. So next week we'll see in Steve Talks Movies channel for episode 4, which I was reliably informed in one of the chats we were in today is an absolute stunning episode. So I shall look forward to that. I shall make sure that I have a clear mind and a good night's sleep before I go to see it. Make sure I don't miss anything. But until then, see you next week, and take care. All the best.